We're going to talk about the Enron email corpus. It's a great honor to be here at Hope. And the title of the talk is Where the Bodies Are Buried. There are two types of bodies in this talk. The first one, of course, is an email body, and there's about 250,000 of those. And then there are actually two real bodies, and we're going to try and walk through the detective story behind this particular case. So let me go back one. So what you see here on the left is the mosaic of 5,000 attached photos that will travel around today in Enron email corpus. And this mosaic, as you can see, is probably 40% white, meaning these are relevant corporate documents, and about the 20 to 30% of them that you see are colorful are in fact very personal photos that are attached to folders of Enron employees. So we're going to do three primary tasks here. First, we're going to fire all the lawyers, and this relates to a case that Enron was prosecuted for. Basically, Texas hacked California's electrical grid, and this led to a massive sort of both political and power crisis in California. And we're going to take a subset of the emails that were submitted for the court case, submit that through machine learning, modern machine learning, 15 years later, and see if we can automate what was given to the legal interns at the time. So this is a project called predictive coding, and it's all over many legal cases simply because what was big in 2002 is much, much bigger in 2018. The second, we're going to try and find the fraudulent activity before, as it happens in email. So we're not strictly going to do pre-crime minority report, but we're going to try and anticipate, could you, with modern tools, actually see the unwinding of this company? And the third project is we're going to ask why. And now I choose that partly because Enron was famous for using this phrase in their ads. They were considered one of the most six years running, the most innovative company in America. And that was their motto, like Apple's Think Different, was ask why. Now, in this case, ask why is a little more confrontational because Enron's email is the largest public email database, Corpus. And as many people realize, email is a two-way conversation. So the fact that we rake in 150 executives' emails, we're actually raking in a lot of to and froms there. And we're going to go through some history of how that came to be public. So we'll say the average age in this room may be 30, so you were somewhere in middle school. I definitely was not in middle school. I was past that. So we're going to get in a little time capsule here and revisit what it was like in 2002. So it was year 13 in The Simpsons, only 17 more years to go. Sorry. And the first thing you notice is the internet came on a CD, AOL. And the second thing is phones really were run by a Finnish company, Nokia, and they actually were mainly used for phones, for taking calls. What you see over here on the left is a word cloud of all the all the personal email domains of all the Enron employees captured. So this gives you a view of sort of who was big then. AOL.com, now owned by Verizon. Yahoo.com, now owned by Verizon. Hotmail, Office 365. And then we finally have Earthlink in here somewhere, which is a conglomerate between Windstreams and some people say Church of Scientology. But anyway, the point is, this is who, if I were sending a marriage announcement, a birthday, good wishing, I may send it from my Enron.com to any of these. The number one show is ER. Over here to the other side, you have an employee who in 1999 says, my job is so crazy, it's exactly like you're watching ER without all the blood. Now, the interesting thing about this is ER exists today in the form, not in terms of a TV show, but in terms of Enron Oil and Gas Resources is really the biggest remaining arm of Enron after it declared bankruptcy. Turns out that's the world's largest natural gas fracker now. So ER still exists long after the TV show. Because we're going to talk about machine versus computer, about a mile from here at Equitable Center. In 1997, you had IBM Deep Blue take on Garry Kasparov. And even though Deep Blue was not machine learning, it was really brute force chess, It really was sort of a remarkable event in terms of a tournament event that computer won, human 0. We're going to run up that tally on the computer side. The last thing that puts us in the time capsule is we had the closest U.S. election looming, and we have some Enron commentary here that probably we're not the greatest advocate for our guy from Texas. A side note here, though, is 537 people in Florida will decide this election. Turns out 10% of the voting population in Florida held Enron stock, mainly through a pension fund, so these are teachers, firemen, et cetera. And they became the largest shareholder of Enron as it was at $95. And they had a strategy that we will buy more at 48, more and more at 22. And finally, when it was $1, all of those Florida pensioners lost their money. It turned out the third member of that pension fund was the brother of the guy who won. So that's where we are. We're in our time capsule, the time period 1998 to 2002. So at this time, Enron was a big deal. I mean, this was the 6th largest company. It would be equivalent today, as it eventually reaches its demise, it's equivalent today of losing Microsoft or losing Facebook. And it really happened between August and December of 2001. So 9/11 comes, and by December 2nd, they're bankrupt. The odd thing is, Fortune magazine really listed them as the most innovative company for 6 years running. Eventually, Enron 2.0, the founder gets 6 counts of fraud. But they had the second, for years running, they had the second most talented staff. They had the highest quality management. They were a top 25 place to work, and they were the world's largest energy trader. So what did they do? And I think now we're sort of getting into where the corpus will lie. Their business model was to diversify, and they had an asset-light model. Many of you may know the notion of we'll buy anything, we'll sell anything, but we'll buy nothing. So the idea is that they were traders. So they traded natural gas, they traded electricity. As it became more and more just about paper transactions, they traded weather in the form of weather derivatives or insurance. They traded carbon emissions. They were a huge advocate of climate agreements because they thought this is going to change everything we do because suddenly we can start just trading CO2. They also had a very big broadband division, which was one of the real downfalls because very capital intensive. And honestly, they started running out of cash. The kind of climax of that, when you know you're jumping the shark in this particular business model, is they roll out a huge deal with video distributor Blockbuster. So Enron Blockbuster will become an issue later on. And so who were the cast of characters? I won't really get into them. There were 20 who were eventually convicted or pled guilty. This one, particularly Andrew Fastow, was the chief financial officer, and he now lectures to business schools, hedge funds, on business ethics, things that go wrong. He does introduce himself truthfully as I was chief loophole officer at Enron. Classically, they eventually got him to plead guilty and testify because they went after his wife, who also really was an early person to be brought into the court case. I will say this litigation continues to go on. As late as December 2015, Jeff Skilling, who was CEO and took a big part of the fall, was still petitioning the Security Exchange Commission. When I get out of prison, which is actually 6 months from now, I still want to sit on public boards, and SEC finally said no. So that's where we are. It's very easy at this point to sort of dismiss Enron. We don't do that sort of stuff anymore. And it's also easy to villainize them, and I just want to present a counterpoint here. Enron was an early advocate of climate agreements. The Kyoto Climate Agreement, they lobbied like mad for. They also really led the natural gas boom, which is really, in many cases, the best chance to displace coal early. You can make an argument you would not have had Governor Schwarzenegger in California, you would not have had Texas Governor Bush, and finally, you would not have had a Death Star, which is why I included it this way. And Death Star in this context will mean a trading strategy to knock out